All right. Welcome, eighth grade. I am so excited to be here and be able to present lessons to you in this way. We are so blessed to have the technology that we have. So let's jump right in. So today we are going to identify key vocabulary and use context clues to find meaning. Um, for today's lesson, what I would like for you guys to have is something to write with, and then you're going to need something to write on. So if you have a journal, um, that's going to be the best place for you to keep your ELA notes during this time. If you don't, go ahead and just grab a loose leaf piece of paper so that you can write down what we're going to talk about today, and you can write down some of the um, things that we're going to do as we go through our notes today. Okay? So, word relationships and meaning. We've talked a lot about vocabulary words. We've talked a lot about context clues. So let's jump right into some specific things that I want to review with you. Sometimes you can only really understand what a word means by looking around at the words around it, and we call this context clues. Okay, so there are four types of word relationships. The first one that we're going to look at is cause and effect. You can tell what a word means by the effect it has caused on another word. So if you need to pause me at any moment, please feel free to do that so you can make sure you're writing the notes down. But cause and effect. So the sentence that I gave you is, since I learned scales, I can hear a song's key more easily. Well, because of this, because I learned scales, I can hear a song's key. Okay? That means that you could make an inference that before she learned scales, she couldn't hear a song easily. Okay? A song's key easily. So because this cause created this effect, I can make an inference that without that cause, that effect was not true. Okay? That just helps me understand the way that the author is using words in a story or in a text to help you find deeper meaning of what the author's writing. Okay? The second type of word relationships that we have are items and categories. I want to make sure you can see that. You can learn more about a word because of it's part of a category. So a category is a group of things or people that share qualities. So a group of people, students, are part of a class. That's a quality. Classes are made up of students. Okay? So I can understand more about students and classes because of the categories that they're put in. Likely, if I were to say things like, if I were to put a list of pizza and fries and Coke and chips, these are all a category of food. Well, what if I gave you a food that you didn't recognize? What if I gave you a list of foods that you weren't familiar with? Like, what if I gave you the list salmon and caviar and Greek salad? What if I wrote a sentence that said, we were going to a restaurant tonight that served salmon, caviar, and Greek salads? Well, maybe you don't know what caviar is, but you do know that salmon is fish, and you know that Greek salad is food. So you could make the same understanding that because it's part of this category, it's items listed together, I don't know what caviar is, but I know that these two things are food. So caviar must also be food. You could go a step further and say, well, salmon and Greek salad maybe are a little fancy food. So maybe caviar is a fancy food or a delicacy. So maybe I still don't understand and I don't know what caviar is, but I have a better understanding of what the word is based on the category that it's put in. Okay? The next one we're going to talk about is synonyms and antonyms. Okay? So synonyms meaning the same, antonyms meaning different. Compare and contrast, synonym, antonyms. We've talked about these words a lot, but I don't know that we've ever fully put them together in this way. So let's look at it. Synonyms and compare, those mean the same thing. Antonyms, contrast, that means to find something different. What's different about these words? Or what's different about the type of sentence that you have, okay? So I've given you a list of words: love, good, safe, give, healthy, new, soft, victory, and then I've given you some synonyms and some antonyms for these words. What I would like for you to do is I'm going to ask you to pause here in a second, and you are going to write one more synonym and one more antonym for each of these words. So in your note, you'll just write good, and then you'll come up with a synonym for it, and then come up with an antonym for it. If you need to look these up because you're just not really sure what it is, that's fine. You have the technology. I want you to use it. Okay? So pause here. Give me one synonym and one antonym in your notes of these different words. We're going to talk about them together when we come live next week. Okay? And then the last one of our word relationships is analogy. Analogy is comparing two things that are similar in some important way, okay? So this looks a little bit like I'm about to teach you some algebra, but I'm not. A is to B like X is to Y relationships, okay? They can show different types of relationships. They can show synonyms, which mean same type of relationships, antonyms, which are different types of relationships, parts of a whole, and then cause and effect like we've already talked about, okay? So the example that I have written here for you is that wing is to bird like fin is to whale, okay? So maybe I don't write a sentence this way, but if I break a sentence down to this, that's the analogy. They're comparing the wing of a bird to the fin of a whale, okay? What we're going to do now is earlier this year, we read from Shakespeare, just a little bit, all the world's a stage, okay? We are going to do a little bit of that together now, okay? So, as I write, I want you to write so that I know you're following along and you can contribute when we go live on Monday with questions or comments about this, okay? So, all the world's a stage. So what is the analogy here? This first analogy is that well, let me finish writing this phrase. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. Okay? So what I see here is that if all the world's a stage, then everybody in the world must be an actor. So if you watched the videos that Uplift posted to the YouTube page or the Facebook page last week, you saw the video about diction and tone and mood, and how diction is the word choice of an author. Well, Shakespeare chose these words for a very specific reason. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out what that reason was. Okay? The next section is they have their exits and their entrances. I remember going through this with you guys. There were a couple things that we drew conclusions here when we said exits and entrance. The first is that this is representative of birth and death. The second one that I know that we talked about was that on and off stage is being compared to in and out of life. So not just birth and death, but in and out of our lives. Some people come into our lives for a time. Some people come into our lives forever. And that's not always, okay? It's not always the case. Some of the people have entrances and exits into our world. The next place, one man in his time plays many parts. For us, this is the way that we play a part. So this is, you are a student, a friend, a sibling, a child. These are the parts that you play in your life right now. And the last of this is his acts, being 7 ages. Okay? These are the things that we do in our lives. There's an act of your life right now that you're in of going to school. Another act is when you go to college, when you become a husband or a wife, or when you become a parent, when you get a career. Those are all acts of your life. They're the parts of your life that as they change. Remember that when we did 12 Angry Men, there were 3 acts. The scene changes. The story evolves. Those are the acts of our lives, okay? So here is the example. What I'd like for you to do now, there is a video posted in your Google Classroom. Sorry, not a video. There's an article posted in your Google Classroom. And I'd like you to go and read that. And you are going to identify inside of that article the 4 different types of word relationships, okay? So you're going to look for a cause and effect sentence. You're going to look for items and categories. You're going to look for synonyms and antonyms. And you're going to look for an analogy. The one that you're probably going to have the hardest time finding is analogy, but that doesn't mean you can't find it, okay? So what you'll do, you're going to go in, read that, and then in the Google Classroom assignment, labeled with the same name as the article, you'll go in and you'll type in your findings, okay? I'm excited. We will talk about it on Monday during our live session. So make sure that you spend this time looking through, reading it. If you have any questions, drop it into the Google document for today where you typed in your name to show that you were here. And we will see you on Monday and we will chat. Thank you, guys.